Welcome. This is the 26 to watch in 26 webinar from Future Campus, and we're delighted to have you here this morning for our last webinar for the year. I'm here with my colleague, Stephen Matchett.
Good morning.
Unusually, we're here in the same city, and in fact, in Stephen Matchett's lounge room. So it's an exciting moment for everyone this morning that we're at least able to start to get together and look at key issues and options for leaders moving forward, and also what are the key attributes of leaders in the higher education sector. What we've found looking into this and talking to a whole range of people who are in leadership roles, but also analysing leadership, is that often there hasn't been a lot of work done to look at and study successful attributes of leadership in higher education in Australia in particular. And it's a really important conversation to move ahead. Now, before we start with that, it's our delight and it's very important to us to acknowledge that we're broadcasting from the Eora Nation of the Gadigal people. We're on their land, and we are very pleased to recognise elders past, present and emerging, and recognise the value of Indigenous culture to our community and also to our sector. We also want to thank Workday for their support in sponsoring the 26 to Watch in 26 feature and this webinar. Workday supports higher education leaders with its cloud-native, AI-powered end-to-end student management system designed to modernise the experience, unify data for higher ed institutions. So thanks to them. Now, Stephen, getting into it, we're going to have a range of guests this morning looking at what makes a good leader in higher education. Who are some of the people who've stood out to you over the past year, and why?
Ian Martin. I think Ian Martin did an extraordinary thing a couple of months ago. He made a speech about the need for universities to regain social license. That resonated around throughout the system and beyond. I think he needed to say it. I don't think he has a solution to it, but it's a long process. It's going to take probably enough long time to do anything about. I don't think leadership in higher education in general has grasped how profound Jason Clare is changing things. And I think it will, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, ATEC is up, it's going to profoundly alter the way the system operates, way differently to the way the old CTEC used to work in the 1990s when there was an equivalent sort of thing. Because now we are living in an age of social media, of instant interactivity. Universities are no longer hermit kingdoms apart from the rest of the community. They now rely on instant feedback, and they now rely on support pretty much immediately. And at the moment, I don't think they're doing a great job about getting it, which raises a question for me, for you, Rachel Huxley, that in Tim's survey this week, a common response from people in the sector was that they wonder whether an undergraduate degree at least is necessary. Is this not an enormous risk, Rachel Huxley, to your entire core reason to exist?
Yes and no. I think this is probably not a new question. I think the issue of the university's role in society is being questioned more so now because of the rise of AI. But I do think that there is a significant role universities need to play, particularly in the VC, you've mentioned the VC's comment and thought leadership around regaining social license and social trust. I think there is a huge role for universities to play in terms of building back community involvement and community engagement. I do feel that for courses, undergraduate courses in particular within the health and medical fields, a degree is still considered a vital prerequisite to a career in the health and medical sciences. But increasingly, I think if I look across the sector into other areas, so business and law, for example, where there is an increasing concern that AI is going to eat up the jobs in many of those areas, then I do think that doubling down on thinking about, well, what is it that we need to be training our students in addition to having a solid theoretical basis. And my thoughts go to the softer skills. I don't like the term softer skills, but I think being able to instill in our students the ability to be adaptive to change, communication skills, critical thinking and reasoning. I think that's where universities need to regain their license and credibility.
Julie Cogin, I want to come to you on that, but just first, George Williams, you've been running hard on the importance of abolishing job-ready graduates and certainly reducing the huge cost of an arts degree. Is pointing to soft skills, for want of a better, is that part of the way to do that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the ticket for me for employability is you need your AI knowledge. I think you've got to understand the technology, but what companies, including companies like Microsoft, are saying is your AI skills aren't enough. You've got to have the human skills. So the critical thinking, creativity, all of those things that you can get from the humble arts degree, I think will absolutely come into their own in the coming years. And that's also because what we know is that there'll be many new jobs created. It's uncertain what there will be. And we've got to have people who are really adaptable, resilient, and who can work within whatever this technology shapes for our society. So yes, I actually think there's a strong employability narrative here as well. And for me, the JRG not only is unfair, but it's demonstrably against the national interest of how we should and what we should be training people for the years to come.
House enrollments have been bounce around, but they've been on a long gradual decline now for a decade. It's whether, in fact, that's accentuated by the price point of JRG is another question. But there is a slow and apparently inexorable decline. How do you address that?
I think obviously the pricing is one bit. I mean, the government sent a price signal and that's had an impact and was designed to have an impact. They sought to dissuade people from doing these degrees by putting the degrees with lower graduate earnings at the top of the pile. So fixing that will have an impact. But I also think it's not just universities, but employers and others getting out there and actually showing the benefits. Explaining why a degree of this kind with the sort of focus it has on the human skills will be so valuable in the developing economy. We should be talking it up with the graduate outcomes, and particularly I'd like to see more industry doing so. And you've got to remember there are so many people in industry with these qualifications. I mean, it's very common, heads of banks, all sorts of areas. It'd be great to hear them talking about why this degree was such a good choice for them.
Julie Cogin, I heard you speak in September, and it was just marvelous. I'm very briefly enthusiastic for a moment. The moment passed, but you talked about the power of AI as a positive in teaching and learning. Is that going to transform what you do at ACU?
Yeah, absolutely. The pace of technological change means that job skills are evolving faster than degree programs. So universities must adapt their education models to continue to be relevant and value enhancing. And as you mentioned, students will question what is more important to employers. Is it the practical skills with AI tools or a formal degree? Now, I don't think it's an either or, but we do need to build baseline AI literacy across staff. We need to have clear policies around AI and develop institutional-wide strategies. Academic staff must be prepared to develop AI-infused curricula to ensure the learning experience, as George has said, moves away from knowledge transmission to critical thinking, judgment, and pursuit of the truth. So this means that we are currently rethinking pedagogy and assessment in particular, and designing to reflect an AI-enhanced learning environment.
Weihong Liang, Sydney, sir. Are your colleagues, your student colleagues, are they way in front of the people supposed to be teaching them on this stuff?
Yeah, but I think students not really. It's really interesting when we hear the leadership always talk about the AI and the impact of the AI. But currently, students they already use that tool to do study. like myself, and there's much increase or efficiency for learning and teaching from student perspective. And particularly for the young generation, AI already become part of their life. So they not really have to worry also what is the impact. So you're not really worried your iPhone's impact for your life because you already use that. So I believe probably the academic should worry how those things, what's the meaning for their research and and study. And students, when they're in the class, they know everything. Probably if you're not prepared well, you'll lose your authority at your class. That's exactly what I feeling when I do a tutor for my undergraduate student last semester. Yeah.
Thanks. It seems to me, George Williams, that there is a leadership issue here to deal with all sorts of new technology and indeed a new funding regime under the new commission. As a Vice Chancellor, how do you step up to that?
I think, I mean, there's a lot of big issues in the sector, of course, and these are some of it. Some of them, there's big issues connected to students, just their ability to get through university is true for many of them. But I suppose how you step up to it is, I think communication is a key first point. We need to understand the problem. We need to talk it through. We need to bring our staff and students on board as well to understand the issue. I think that's really critical. I'm also a strong believer that many of the solutions will come from our staff and students. I actually don't pretend I've got the answers. Usually I don't. They've got smarter ideas than me. So how do you crowdsource within a brilliant university community to come up with great ideas and ways of moving forward? And I think that crowdsourcing idea is really important too, because you need to be quite agile in dealing with these. And if it's too centrally driven, it's very hard to, I think, support the experimentation, adaptability, flexibility that we need. So I suppose I see myself as leading a really talented, brilliant community, and my job's to work with that community to liberate them and help us navigate this time. And I think the other thing I'd say about that is not pretending there is even a particular answer at the moment. It's sometimes the best you can do is chart a course, free people up to let them experiment and move forward, because I think anyone who says this is the way we should structure or design even our AI programs for the next 3 or 4 years is missing the point. It's going to change too rapidly to pin our colours to the mast in that way.
You're very fortunate in that you've got a university with a very strong, definable geographic catchment that and for decades you have stood for Western Sydney, pure and simple. Is that going to make it easier for you as a Vice Chancellor to build a sense of community, maintain a sense of allegiance, and leadership, as opposed to
absolutely, and that's one of our superpowers as a university is. I mean, even from the branding, our university going back to 2015, we changed it to Western Sydney University to emphasise we're Western Sydney. People often just abbreviate us to Western Sydney as a university because we are inseparable from our community. And our mission, if you like, is we have to be the university that Western Sydney needs and deserves for its enormous transformation, both people, economic and the like. So we often take a view that, is it good for the community? That's really what we're looking at. And sometimes we'll do things that may not have obvious benefits for us, but it absolutely delivers for Western Sydney, and that's the way it should be as a community-based university. So yes, that's a tremendous advantage for us, and it's really a defining feature of who we are.
George, quick couple of questions because I know you've got to go. The survey we did found that only about 15% of staff who responded to the survey believed that we had a chance of achieving that accord goal of 80% workforce of the workforce having qualifications by 2050. Also, there was a pretty high read of staff respondents who didn't trust universities and who also were unsure about the value of doing a degree. It seems to suggest we've got some issues to fix at home.
I think it speaks to the confidence issue, both of those answers, that people are a bit of a low ebb when it comes to community confidence. There's more work to be done here. And the thing we know is if you care about good societies and communities, you need great universities. We train great citizens, we build social cohesion, community harmony, all of those things. And of course, we drive economic and social transformation. So, our future as a nation depends upon our universities, without a doubt. But when people are worried about the university's mission and what we're delivering, there's no doubt it bleeds into other things as well. when it comes to that target, yeah, I'm on the optimistic side. I believe we can make it. The question is there the will? Are there the policies? Absolutely, we can make it. And here again, I think we can have two sides of this conversation. One is the transformational power of AI, and then suddenly things are too hard to deliver. I'd actually say, well, AI is going to be a large part of actually delivering that target. And for me, I'm really positive about what AI means for delivering quality education for cohorts that have never had the chance at higher education. My big challenge is 50,000 students, but people with really individual learning needs, problems, issues to address. If I can get agentic AI and other systems tailored down to addressing particular learning needs, I'll be much more able to scale up education, to address their issues and get them out with a quality education. So for me, I actually think the technology we're talking about will absolutely supercharge our ability. Government funding needs to back it, but if there's a will, I actually believe the technologies will make it easier and better to deliver quality education.
Last question before you go. Best example of leadership you've seen in the past year, not from your institution?
There's a lot of good things going on. I mean, we're a bit jealous of the great things Bill Shorten's doing down there. He's doing great things at Canberra. We'll look at following some of the harmonisation work he's doing. I think it's been excellent. Ian Martin, I think, is doing great work as well on some of the social license. There are lots of examples. There's just two quick ones from Australia. But look, the place that I would particularly look to would actually be Arizona State, Michael Crow, what's happening there. That, for me, is the best international yardstick, is what does it mean to be truly innovative, bold, courageous? And, we'll follow a different course to that. But I'm very impressed, as many people in the sector are, with what they've been able to achieve. And I think there's a lot I can learn myself from the leadership there.
Awesome. Thanks.
Let me follow on from that and throw one to whoever wants to pick it up. Seems to me that we've got there's a dichotomy between leadership for an institution and leadership of ideals, of the traditional things universities stand for. And it's often the ideals that are under challenge more than the university as a place. You can be highly critical of whether certain sorts of subjects are worth studying anymore and still think that your local university is doing a pretty good job. How do you distinguish? How does a vice chancellor or a faculty leader be a leader for both?
I'll give a quick answer, then I'll drop off and leave you to others. I think for me, a lot of it just comes down to consistency in purpose and message. And I think that's, a key problem within the community. When you look at those surveys, they're seeing incoherence there. And, if you look at one of the surveys I had in the little essay I put out, 80% of Australians said that universities should be there for education, first and foremost students. And when asked what universities were actually there for, 54% profit, and educating students was very low. So that's I think goes to the heart for me, a lot of the misalignment, if you like, in community expectations. But I think as a leader, the answer is just be crystal clear what your mission is and put actions in place and make the hard decisions that actually back that in. And I think the rest will fall into place. And for me, clear mission of student success, impactful research, and we serve our community in Western Sydney and more broadly. Just stick to that. But I do have to go, but thank you.
Thanks very much, George.
See ya.
Julie Cogin, how does that apply for a university like ACU? I mean, lots of campuses.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got 7 campuses around Australia and also a campus in Rome. And each of those campuses have a unique community that we need to serve. And I think that's the point, that's picking up on George's message. You are serving a community, and those partnership skills are very important. Government partners, industry, the local community. So, you've got to have a laser focus on those stakeholders. And for us, it's also the church, and the Catholic Church is an important stakeholder for us. And we deliver more teachers than any other university in Australia, and nearly the same amount with nurses that go on to work in Catholic schools and Catholic hospitals.
I'll come to you in a moment, Weihong, on that. But Rachel Huxley, how does that issue work when you've got a faculty with so many part-timers?
It's complex. I think one of the issues that needs to be addressed through ATEC is the fact that many universities, I would say half of our 40 universities, have a significant cohort of students from non-traditional backgrounds. We're very proud of the fact at Deakin that we have a very significant proportion of our students are non-high school leavers. We have mature age students, we have career returners, but they often take courses with a fractional load, a part-time load, and yet one of the metrics upon which universities are going to be held to is the number of, or the CSP load, the number of actual heads as opposed to the actual student load. It sounds a little bit of a technicality, but it's going to have massive implications for many regional universities, unless there is some nuance put around those estimates.
And could I come in here, Stephen, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, go.
Because I think it links really nicely with the discussion around AI. Because there is a bit of a stereotype that students turn to AI out of laziness. But research shows us that they've got so many competing pressures and limited time to study. A survey of Times Higher Ed of Australasian universities, so Australia and New Zealand, found that almost 90% of students now must work during their studies to cover for food, rent, and living costs, as well as to offset the debt. And this has been a significant increase over the last decade. So for me, it's understandable when students are faced with these pressures, they turn to AI for help with difficult concepts, when they can't get to class, or when a task feels like busy work. More and more students are taking a less than the full load for their study. So typically it's 4 courses or 4 units each semester. So you do 8 a year so it's the average. But the average over Australia now is under that. So I think that is important. It does explain some of the challenges we face in funding, but also the AI usage.
Well, do you see leadership from your university at a macro level? Do you get a sense that people who run the place actually are aware of your needs?
Yes, of course. I would like to think, and I see lots of evidence that we're holding a long-term view while dealing with the daily turbulence, the funding pressures, the workforce fatigue, enrolment shifts, digital disruption. So what I see is that our university and our Vice-Chancellor, Zlatko Skirbish, is offering clarity without pretending certainty exists.
Weihong, what about your members? What do they say to that?
I think student needs is really clear. That's not something complex. The problem is how to fix that needs. We already talked about the housing matters, the food at campus, the big ratio for the student and staff, and the lack of full-time academics, reliant academics and casual academics for the system, and the whole income for the university is unsustainable. That's something we discussed for about 2 or 20 years, but it's not really hard. It's really hard to find a solution on that. So currently, it's really hard to get student attraction. If we talk about, let's have a discussion about higher education, they're not really interested in involve that discussion because they not really have the confidence that can be fixed. That's the problem. I'm also sit at the Senate of University of Sydney, and I'm sure that people are aware about that we have that problem, but it's really hard to drive the change. And also back to the part-time student matter, when we talk about the student from the ACU and from the Newcastle University, they told me for the domestic undergraduate student, nearly full of them, all of them should do part-time work, and that already is nearly destroy the union work, the student union work at the campus, because you cannot find any student at campus. And particularly for the first and second year student, in their golden time, they should stay at the campus, stay at class to meet their friends. But now we force work 2 or 3 days a week. Are they still a student, or do they enroll in as a full-time student? And so
Rachel, how does
lastly, when
that
we
trans? Sorry, I'm just really interested in that, Weihong, because you're illustrating one of the issues of campus decline while students have to go off campus to work and
yeah
a range of pressures there. Rachel, you and Julia both in multi-campus
Yeah.
universities. How is that How is that working, and what sort of pressures is that creating, and how are you going to fix it in 2026?
Um, so again, I think we're trying to focus on what the student needs are. So if I think about before the pandemic, we had 25% of our student body being fully online. When Jane Den Hollander was the VC, she was ahead of the curve. She made huge inroads into digital learning. And so it meant when COVID hit, we we're readily able to pivot to fully online. And it has been a work in progress, I would say, over the last couple of years, bringing more staff and student back onto campus. But to think that we're ever going to get back to where we were in 2019 in terms of occupancy is a fool's errand. It's just not going to happen. So what we're doing is actually thinking more about how do we use our current facilities, our current building and footprint much better, much more vibrant, to create a much more vibrant, sustainable place that people actually, not just our students, but our local communities. I'll give you an example. On Friday night, we had at the Burwood campus, the east of Melbourne, we had a special event, special evening, end of year celebration, community celebration, where the university, the campus was open to the local community, bit of a fair, bit of a fun time. But we're deliberately trying to build links with our communities so that it's not going to be the same traditional way of what a university looked like in terms of staff and student. We want industry onto our campuses. We want our community onto our campuses. So I'm actually quite excited by what the future holds in that regard.
You mentioned Jane Den Hollander, who was probably one of the great VCs of her generation. I mean, she was an extraordinary woman. But she was famous, as far as I'm aware, for management by walking around.
Yeah.
She'd walk around campus with very important people in tow, and she'd bail people up and say hello, which I'm sure drove very serious persons completely nuts. That's going to be a little tricky now, what with the vast number of students not physically being there, unless she wants to talk to their avatars. I mean, what are the challenges now for a VC in terms of that sense of esprit de corps?
Yep. I'll 3 words: communication, communication, and more communication. I think that's essentially. But how? That's when you have a distributed leadership model. That's when you put you bring your senior leaders across the organization, and they will all need to have the same sense of direction, the same mission and vision, so that they can communicate that down to their teams and their leaders, because it's absolutely impossible to have one person. I would not want that job, but one person to be across 5,000 individuals and all of their team. It's simply impossible. So that's where I think distributed leadership is absolutely critical.
How do people learn to do that?
By example, I think. I think as the leader at the top, you really have to have a very clear sense of purpose and what the mission is. Now, I'll come back to the question that you first asked me at the beginning of this talk, which is about the role of universities. And it's something I've really thought about a lot over the past couple of years, because I think the waters have become a little bit muddy. When I went to university back in the day, my father told me that, you go to the university for an education, not for a job. And yet now we're being assessed on our employability of our graduates, getting them into full-time work. And it seems that we're squeezing out some of the actual critical element of a university, which is around creative thought and discovery, that sense of discovery. You have no idea where it might lead to, but it's such an important part of our research ecosystem. So coming back to the other question about, sorry, going off on a tangent, but how do you learn from it? It's about having a clear vision of what your organization it stands for. And this is not just for universities. I would think every institution across the board has the same challenge. And then being authentic and being able to convince people that this is what we stand for and what we're going to deliver. And then I think the third part of the thing is about being accountable. You know, are you doing what you are saying you're doing? And if not, why not? So being authentic, being visible, and being accountable, those are, for me, some of the critical elements of good leadership today.
Hello, Kelly Matthews. I sit up straight when Kelly Matthews enters the room. But before Julie Cogin, let me come to you on that. But first, I just want to ask Weihong. You ever met the dean of your faculty, Weihong?
As a student leader, I have the chance, but if a student, they may not really know who's the dean. And usually the dean is the faculty is really large. From the Faculty of Arts and Social Science, they have many schools, and the school they have disciplines. So, yeah. But that's a really interesting question, because when I studied in China as an undergraduate student in China, we have deans, and they're also a large school. But the deans is really famous for student and the association deans. So we have many class, and the discipline is it's not some platform just for academic. Students know they believe or they belong to a certain discipline. Then they have regular catch up. They have the student session every week, and when they graduate, they have two graduation ceremony, one from the deans at the school level, the other one for the general level. So it's a traditional way, I think. So I always think about the question that I'm not sure if the university at Australia, they keep the current style in past 100 or 200 years. That cannot be happen. So it should be in a certain date, a certain year. After that, all things be changed. Because when I see the legacy of the whole university be created here, that's great. And if an institution like today's situation, they cannot be here for 175 years. So when that be changed and how to make sure they change to a good direction, that actually is from student voice.
Julie Cogin, Rachel Huxley's idea to maintain core traditional values of a university. How does that sit for leaders in an institution like ACU, which has a very strong heritage in basically vocational education?
Look, I think it holds. We are a university, and we've got a legacy going back more than 100 years. We have our biggest area is the health sciences. We also have law school and other, which are much more conventional higher education areas. We've got growing research areas, and we were just recently by the Times ranked #1 in the world for research quality in psychology. So I think that we're very, very much well and truly a university. But what Weihong is saying is that connection with the students is something that's part of our DNA and something that's a real strength, and maybe that comes from our history. So with just the recent Quilt survey, we were ranked second out of public universities for the student experience. We were ranked #1 in Australia for the quality of our graduates by employers. And that's because of our focus on not just preparing students for the job after study, it's about developing the whole student. So thinking about them psychologically, physically, academically, intellectually. And so that's something that we really try to do. We have small classes. Our academic staff know the names of the students in the class. Industry is bought in and integrated. Most of our students will be on placement or internship, or will be doing work in the community to help with charities or to support homelessness and things like that. So each university has a different mission, but ours is strong, and it's really one of the secret sources to ACU.
Julie, there's a great question from the floor, which I'll ask you and then go to Kelly for her thoughts, which relates to inclusive communities, I guess, and what we're doing with our community. So AI, can we talk a little about conscientious objectors to AI, copyright, ethics, environmental impact, etc., and how you see their place in the AI discussion?
Yeah, I think that they've got a very important part in the discussion. AI has been, it's gone faster than governance and laws can keep up to date. So they play a role, and that's one of the reasons we've got to focus on teaching students judgment. How do you assess the quality of the information that you're getting? So for ChatGPT, for instance, it's picking up all of the junk in the internet as well. Anyone can call themselves a thought leader and have a LinkedIn profile and, talk garbage, and that will come up in your ChatGPT. So the governance is really important. Now, I'm delighted that there's many other new AI tools that are coming out that have these lenses and have a safety element. So they're coming out, they're subscription models, and I think that they are very important for us to be utilising, and I'd love to see them as open source, so they're free for use for everybody.
Kelly, welcome. And you appear to have been cloned, as far as I can see.
We can't make it work. We're trying to figure out where to put our heads. I don't know. We have to learn from Stephen and Tim right there.
Yeah, just got a nod at the right moment. So, Amanda and Kelly, welcome. We're delighted to have your contribution. So I'm not sure if you heard that question, but the idea of conscientious objectors, the dissenters who don't like AI in our world, and who may feel excluded from the conversation, how are we going at including those voices as well as working out, the general direction forwards?
First of all, it's lovely to see everyone. Amanda and I are in Adelaide together, kind of popping in. I'll start though.
Amanda's in another galaxy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the virtual background going a bit crazy.
Yep. Look, when I think, for me, one of the biggest risks that we have moving forward in higher education in the tertiary sector, and it's not about one university, but it's about us together, is public and social trust. And I think our students particularly feel that. And conscientious objection is a really great example.
Maybe if we're slightly further away.
When it comes to conscientious objection, I think we've got to be able to hold the space for students and staff who feel that way to be able to explain and to talk about without shame. We don't need to agree, but we need to disagree well. And I think that is, again, it's another opportunity for us to start to repair that trust between students and staff, as well as thinking more broadly. But for me, I'm just really kind of so focused on the trust that we need to rebuild. And it starts with how we are willing to listen to people who don't have the same views that we've got. Amanda, would you?
Yeah. If it'll figure out where I am. I think we'll just take turns coming in and out of the camera. Kelly talked about trust today at her Askellite keynote, and it's something that, is the foundation for learning. So whether we're in an AI environment or not an AI environment, students won't do the hard work, whether that hard work is AI assisted or not AI assisted, if there's not a trusting relationship for us to be able to say, if things go wrong, we're here. We're here for support. We're here to be guides. And that trust doesn't necessarily sit within institutions. Students feel proud of the university that they're at, but that trust comes from relationships with their peers, the people they might meet at the front desk when they're trying to enroll, their academics. So it's quite a complicated situation in which we want trust in institutions, but it's being built at the individual people level.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. Rachel, I know you have to go. No doubt your plane is being called as we speak. Last thoughts on A, trust, B, a leader who has done something remarkable that you remember this year, not from your institution?
Okay, I'm going to bring my Pollyanna to the room. Universities, I think, are still rated the third most trusted sector across Australia. Around 70% were just behind the health services. And I think that's a really good place to be. So I don't think it's all gloom and doom. Interestingly, we've just set up a trust lab in AI. So this brings in our health consumers center to actually understand from the consumers, students, staff, industry partners, their fears and concerns around AI and how we integrate that with the technical side. Just a couple of leaving thoughts, if I may. We haven't really talked anything about the other half of a university's mission, which is around research. And the NHMRC funding schemes have just been announced. And again, pretty woeful success rates across the board. So for one of the funding schemes, we're down to 8%, which means there is a tremendous amount of money, time, resource going into unsuccessful applications. There is a better way of doing research. And I genuinely believe we need to be doing more and investing more in research and innovation across the country. And then my final comment around the JRG, one of the things I've noticed in my role for a number of years now is there is a profound disconnect between any sense of workforce planning by both our state and federal governments with the graduates that we produce. And I'm speaking particularly as the Dean for the Faculty of Health and Medicine here at Deakin. We are responsible for generating the future health workforce, but there does not seem to be on the other side of the fence any real planning around what the future health workforce looks like. We're still training people for jobs of the 20th century. I want to start training people for the future jobs of this century. Tim, Stephen, delightful to be on this program. Sorry, I have to go and get a plane now, but thanks very much for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Can I throw back to the question of leadership for Kelly and Amanda in particular? Amanda, what you're saying makes perfect sense for a woman who is just outstanding. Amanda loves to audit. It's incredible what you've done with that. And you are clearly you are a leader, and you're a leader because you are famous for spending time with your students and caring about them, but you also know how to teach.
And you've got people interested in accounting, which
is
not enough. Not enough.
Happy
to train
I didn't know all those years. I never knew what I was missing. Kelly Matthews, you look at someone like Amanda and your long career in helping people learn how to teach. Does it in the end come down to a question of personality and commitment? And it's not loyalty to discipline so much as it is as a desperate desire to teach.
I will say one of the things I think it comes down to sitting next to Amanda is, first of all, it's the passion and it is the caring and it is the excitement. And sometimes in higher education, I think we forget that affect matters so much, that I bring that energy and that interest. And then the commitment to say, we're going to do hard things, but together, you are going to be challenged and supported. Another part of that leadership, and again, I was with Amanda last night, and someone came up to Amanda and said, thank you so much for all that you're saying about what's going on right now. As a staff member, that matters to me. So again, I think there's also that authenticity and that willingness to say, I'm going to say some things with respect, but it's important that they get said. And so that's that advocacy that I think happens as well. And I've seen Amanda do that. I've seen Weihong do that so well for international students in particular. And I really love the point that he made before about the way I heard it was continuity and change. There's something beautiful about the way that education has been, but it's got to change. And we need to do a better job of working out. What do we hold on to? What is it that the Amandas and other leaders bring that we need to hold on to while other things change around us? And most importantly, how do we make sure students and staff are okay in that changing environment?
Field Marshal Wavell said that there are no bad regiments, just bad colonels. Does that that apply? Is it really a question of at a low and medium level? It really is a question of personality and a desire and an ability to enthuse.
Look, I'll add to this and then I'll open it because I suspect that Julie, Amanda, and Weihong have some views on this as well. I'm not going to go with its personality. I don't think that people are kind of have this. I think that people like Amanda work really hard. They take it as serious work. And how then do we take the teaching part as being similar to the research in something that we reward and we recognize and we invest in our staff so that they can take that time to learn it well?
I think that's such a good point, Kelly. My mother was a high school science teacher, and mad respect to all the high school teachers out there, because teaching teens sounds so tough. And teaching adults is a little bit different. But people might not know that I had somebody from a theatre class come and observe me teach to figure out how was I presenting myself. I've done improv. I've looked at, when I started making content, cinematography, and great teachers online. What captures everybody's attention? How do social media influencers who use social media to basically sell stuff, some supplement, some equipment, some fitness package, how could we leverage everything they have explored about building and retaining attention? Because it is an attention economy, right? We're just trying to grab students' attention more and more. How can we leverage off all these different areas? And you're right, this is my profession. I take it seriously. I invest in myself. But we're also in a very complicated environment in which there are so many pressures on staff in universities that you think, when do I have time? How do I figure out what I invest in? And how do I get those supports to be able to do that? And for myself, how do I encourage every PhD student who is keen to become an academic to develop a love for their students and a love for the endorphin of when a student goes, oh, I get it. That's addictive. So how do I get them hooked on that?
Julie, Cogin, just not speaking for ACU, but just in general, is there enough recognition of those values that Amanda was talking about, of the importance of teaching in hierarchies?
Absolutely not. No, I don't believe so. And even at a national level, I was fortunate years ago when I was at UNSW to win a Carrick Award. And then it became the Learning and Teaching National Awards. So we should be doing this as a country, and we should be celebrating, the type of passion, dedication, commitment that Amanda speaks of.
Julie, I'll pick up on another point. Amanda said that it is her profession. And yet we talked all about her teaching. She's got to her position because she's good at accounting, and then the teaching we expect teaching, and we don't necessarily have qualifications for that profession of actually the teaching part of the job. Is that something we're going to see more of, the professionalization of teaching?
Absolutely. And there's more and more academics doing graduate certificates of learning and teaching. A lot of institutions have got them. We've got them. My last institution had one too, and they're doing them, and it's wonderful. And I think greater recognition. All universities. I spent 20 years in GO8 universities that understand and recognise that there's different academic pathways. There's the teaching research, which is probably the majority. There's the education focus. There's the research focus. There's a leadership and engagement academic pathway. And you need all of those. It's about the balance. You need all of those to deliver on universities' strategic plans and to meet the objectives that the government has given us.
Weihong, what are your teachers like?
That's a really tough question. Yeah. Yeah. But I was a high school.
Talk about a friend rather than you.
I
know someone.
Your members,
not you.
What are your members' teachers like?
Yeah, when I hear from Amanda about her mother as a high school teacher, I was working at a high school. So there's no secret behind teaching. and learning, particularly for the teaching. You should have enough teacher here. The working law, that's a problem. And that's not just a question for Australia. The research academic not want to do teaching, most of them, because only research product can be accounted as their achievement and have them promotion. That's a common matter for every location at this world. But different point is we lack of the number of teachers at university, particularly for the full-time people. That
So we
have
need
not
more teachers.
Yeah, we need more full-time teachers or academics, and they also encourage why domestic students not want to do the research because it's hard for them to get job because university not open many teaching positions for them. So why international students come here to PhD because we come back to our own country to teach her. We have many positions at that place. Even one day we not really have position overseas. There's no international student come here to PhD as well. So that's not just a simple question. We should get enough full-time teacher position at university.
I'll just jump in here as well. You know, with education being such a large export and such an important driver of the growth and success of our country, the fact that we don't invest in research, in teaching and learning in any systematic way anymore, with the OLT grants going, you know, we still have lots of research happening by very passionate people, but not in a coordinated way that is help us going to drive Australian higher education to be the best in the world. And it's a fantastic product, but we could always improve. But that's also going to require the government to have a real vision, to invest in great people like Kelly, like Molly Dollinger, Jason, Tim Fawns, all these great people who are really thinking about how do we improve higher education as a whole? Because it's great to have one great teacher, but how do we lift the tide across all of our teaching academics? And I know that most of us who work in universities have PhDs. There are some really great teachers who don't have PhDs, who, for a various number of reasons, that isn't on the cards for them. How could we support them through doctors of education or other things so that we can foster those really great teachers to stay in our system as well?
What do you say to that, Kelly Matthews? You run a strong teaching development operation in a group of 8 research universities.
The first thing that was coming to my mind was just well said, Amanda, for Prime Minister, because I do think there's a vision opportunity actually in the government moving forward around that universities and the broader tertiary sector could be a part of thinking through. That really does uplift the educational mission that we all have above and beyond the research mission. I think as well, Stephen, that the opportunity moving forward, and if the government can have it, this is an opportunity for vice chancellors, for chancellors, senates, boards, deputy vice chancellors, that level of senior leadership to step up and say, how do we work together as collaborators to address some of these shared problems, opportunities, challenges? How do we not try to all repeat each other with an AI strategy, but how do we work together and foster that level of collaboration? And we put our own investment because we know we're going to get so much more out of that if we are willing to say, let's put researchers, practitioners together to solve some of these issues and bring our students on board with us.
And they will say, beats us. What should we do, Kelly?
Well, and I love it because I have seen, again, we just gave a panel on a 4-institution project, 4 DVCAs, just gave us funding for a 3rd year because they said, actually, we need people thinking about this. We need to fund an understanding of, this case, the students and the experience of AI. And a little bit of contribution from us can go a long way to not only give the permission, but to try to start to demonstrate that we can collaborate. This is not always about being in a competitive environment.
Julie Cogin, it seems that COVID was an enormous success for Australian universities in that they did not fall apart. In fact, they did pretty well in the end. They got through, classes continued, they got through. Have we a culture that leadership fails to make the most of? that in those first weeks of COVID, when everybody just realized, well, we're going to have to take everybody online, how do we do this? They did it. And yet 2 or 3 years later, I hear a lot of people grumbling. I get a lot of grumbling from people about the state of their institutions. Leadership-wise, how do you beat that? How do you?
Look, I was so fortunate to be working for Martin Bean. He was the Vice Chancellor at RMIT. I was DVC there during COVID, and his leadership sustained our team on days when none of us had much left to give. There was so much pressure, especially in Victoria, 2 years in lockdown, and the days were long, and we spent it managing costs, really caring for staff and students, and at the same time as this complete transformation of the sector, pretty much going online overnight. So there's nothing that people could say that universities are not innovative. They are there. But honestly, the pace of change now, I feel, is even more than we've experienced during COVID times. We're getting changing regulation on a weekly basis. If you just look at internationally, the situations for students in terms of costs for visas, processing times, the caps, it is extraordinary. We're getting policy the month before we're supposed to implement it in universities. It's very, very difficult to continue to pivot at that pace by that extent. So that's it's requiring whole teams of people to be employed to meet the new reporting obligations and the additional scrutiny that's on universities.
Can I throw one to all of you? What does an inspiring vice chancellor look like?
Can I jump in there? Because I'm going to come back to Martin Bean here. He is a vice chancellor that invests deeply in creating high performance teams and developing people. And Stephen, he offers feedback so openly and constructively, you don't always realize what's happening. He won't tell you what to do, but he will ask great questions. It sparks your insight and supports your personal growth. Every interaction with him, even the, hey, Julie, you need to do better conversations, he leaves you walking away feeling encouraged, capable, and with your self-esteem strengthened rather than diminished, a really legend status. So I think that's that real personal connection with people. I was a direct report of his, but it was everybody he came in contact with. He would make sure he spent time with lots of students, lots of staff. It didn't matter who you were. And so that those interpersonal skills, very, very gifted person who deeply cares about others. So that would be my vote.
Kelly?
Thanks. I'm not going to talk about a specific person, although I'm at a university with a fantastic vice chancellor in Debbie Terry, and some of these are her qualities. But I think the vice chancellor that we need now and over the next couple of years has got to be one who can communicate complexity well with a human sense and a real focus on mission and purpose, including how decisions get made across the institution. I think right now there's a lot being said about governance, if you will, but that leadership as decision-making and how I set up the processes so people might not agree with the decision, but they knew how they were a part of the decision. They appreciated that process. They make that clear. And importantly, they can tell the story of what's about higher education. They can tell the story of learning in a way that can kind of break across. So there's a flexibility and a skill set there. And the vice chancellor alone could never do this. So it's also, how do I create that leadership team and the culture across the institution that says, I know how to listen well, I know how to respond, and I know how to make decisions that not just the university, students and staff, but that the public can feel that they are connected to.
Weihong?
I believe they should have a global vision to understand what's currently changed for the whole world and to understand the benchmark of all university at Australia overseas, what it looks like, and have the brief to say, okay, although we're not doing well at Australia for that, but they have good case overseas. We can copy that, learn that. They need some brief to say, we have resources, but just need to change some
Amanda White.
man
I
about.
think like inspiration, we want to be inspired as somebody who doesn't sit at a senior executive level. I want a vice chancellor I can look up to, and I feel like I know this person, that I know what they're interested in, why they're here at my institution, what is driving them. And there's also accountability and transparency. I think a key feature of modern leadership, and we look at it in terms of social responsibility, the gender-based violence work that all the universities are doing, is about how are we accountable and how can we be transparent. And that's scary because once we've got transparency, we've got vulnerability. It means that our mistakes are going to be laid bare. But I would really love leadership to think about saying, actually, I did make a mistake, and here's what I've learned, and here is how we're all going to go forward, because universities are full of high performers. And high performers really rely, I feel like, on trust. And when that trust is broken, what you'll find is that your high performers maybe are then not rowing in the same direction that you're hoping to row in. And that's a really important thing to ensure that our universities are these big ships that all need to be all the parts need to be moving in that same direction. And if we can build trust and you can inspire staff to do that through great leadership, then I think we're in good hands.
Fantastic. That is a wonderful spot to end. I really want to thank you all. Thank you to George Williams in his absence. Julie, I know you've dialed in from offshore, made time for this, and I know this discussion is really important to you. Weihong, I want to really commend you for your leadership through the year. I know we all appreciate that we're hearing from international students now, and we're expecting a lot more from you and great things in 2026. Kelly and our surprise guest, Amanda, a delight as always to have your contributions. I've really appreciated the very articulate and interesting responses that you've made. I think this is a really great start to a discussion that I think we're going to see a lot more of through 2026 as there is so much change in the sector. But I think this sets us up for a good end of year. Thanks again to Workday and also all our 2025 and 2026 partners at Future Campus. I'll just mention them: the ATN Group of Universities, the Australian Catholic University, Deakin University, RMIT University, UNSW, Macquarie University, Griffith University, and the University of Queensland, Western Sydney University, and our original sponsor, Uni Mutual, who came on board when no one else would. Thank you, Stephen. This has been a treat. We're
out.
Bye.
Bye.